Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us tonight for our webinar on family adventure travel. My name is Sally Grimes, and I am the Marketing Director at Journeys International. And this is one of my favorite topics, so I'm so excited to have you here with us and with our presenter, Robin from Journeys and Ches from Family Travel. I will introduce them in just a couple of minutes. In addition to being the marketing director at Journeys, I'm the lucky mom of two girls, Lillian and Sylvia, and I've been fortunate to be able to travel with them around the world as well as the country. I am so excited to be able to listen to some of Robin's stories and some of Chris's stories tonight and get their advice on future travel with my kids, as well as hearing about their own travel with their kids. Before we get going, I have one quick housekeeping item for you. You should see a control panel on your screen, and there's a questions box. I encourage you to add your questions in there throughout the entire webinar. We will have quite a bit of time at the end available for question and answer, and I'll be sending those questions over to Robin and Ches and moderating the questions at the end. So as you think of them, go ahead and put them in there, and we'll get them over to our presenters. So let's go ahead and get started. I'd like to first introduce Robin Weber Pollock, the president of Journeys International. Robin has been traveling since she was 4 years old. Her parents started Journeys International and took her to Nepal on her first trip. Her most epic adventure was 7 months when she was 16, traveling around Asia and the Pacific. She has an amazing perspective on how travel affects children because she was a child who traveled her entire childhood. Now she is the parent of Jacob, who's almost 2, and so she's also gaining the perspective of planning travel as a parent. In addition, we have a guest speaker on the webinar, Chris Chezik. He is the Executive Director of Family Travel Association. Ches has also been traveling his entire life. He got his start with his father, traveling around the United States in a Volkswagen camper van. After that, when he grew up a little bit, he got a job working as executive director of the Adventure Travel Trade Association, where he traveled to over 25 countries. Now he's the executive director of Family Travel Association. He has said that his favorite travels are with his 2 girls and getting to see the new places, the new people they meet, and the new skills they learn along the way. So I am going to turn it over to Chris now, who will kick us off with an introduction to family travel, and then after that, we'll turn it over to Robin. Go ahead, Chris.
Thanks, Sally, and thanks for everyone for joining us today. I'm really excited to be here to talk about family travel, family adventure travel. It's certainly a topic that's very close to my heart. And as Sally mentioned, I'm the Executive Director for the Family Travel Association, or FTA, which is a new industry coalition of family-focused travel companies all joining together to collectively help strengthen and unify the family travel industry. Our members are companies large and small, domestic and international, household names to startups, and really just kind of the gamut of companies that might be focused on adventure travel. And our collective mission is pretty much pretty delightfully simple, I think, to inspire families to travel more. So we're really looking to kind of harness the collective power of all these companies, our members, to help families better understand all their travel options and really just help make traveling kind of more accessible across a variety of fronts there. And so we're a relatively new association, but we've seen a great response from the industry thus far. Already have 150 members. And these members represent the fantastic diversity of companies that engage in family travel. They're everyone from big household names like Disney and Atlantis to remote dude ranches that specialize in clients with families. We work with national, state, and local tourism boards in Alaska, Costa Rica, and Albany are examples of some of them. Accommodations include Western resorts all the way to family-owned eco lodges. We like to say we've got providers from ANK to KOA, and that means our members represent high-end travel trips like those from Abercrombie and Kent, all the way to much more accessible family travel with members like Campgrounds of America. We work with a lot of editorial media, bloggers, travel agents certainly, and of course, family-friendly tour operators like Journeys International. Let me just advance the slide here, 1 second. So I'm also going to talk a little bit about what exactly is family travel. Family travel is really two or more people who are related, either by blood or by choice, of different generations traveling together. Generally, one of those people is, as you might imagine, a child, someone under 18, and that's really the FTA's focus, right on that family travel that includes children. Now, what's adventure travel? As defined by our friends at the Adventure Travel and Trade Association, it's really when three elements come together during a trip: a physical activity, interaction with the environment, and some sort of cultural exchange. When you've got two of those things, it's maybe kind of adventure travel, but when you bring all three together, that's absolutely adventure travel. Now, sometimes people get a little nervous when they hear adventure. They think it's something kind of extreme or really far-fetched or something difficult or challenging, but really literally 98% of the adventure travel industry is what's called soft adventure. It's those adventures that are more accessible to the average person. And those can be everything from walking tours to birding, stand-up paddleboarding, bike tours, kayaking, all those good stuff, good things. Whereas hard adventure is really anything that requires a rope, like caving or climbing, maybe some long-distance trekking or backpacking, or really highly technical sports like windsurfing. And thus, family travel is, when you put those two things together, family travel and adventure travel is, of course, family adventure travel, right? So just a quick note about some of the programs we have at the FTA, because I'll present some information a little bit later from two of them. We work with institutions like NYU and George Washington University. Oops, let me go back a slide here. Let me try to go back a slide here. Okay, sorry. As I was saying, we work with institutions like NYU and George Washington University to create research reports on family travel trends. We have a consumer-facing website, which will be overhauled and beautified soon at familytravel.org. We launch nationwide ad campaigns to help promote family travel. We work with our media partners like Travel and Leisure, Scholastic, Afar Magazine, and others. Consumer promotions like different trip sweepstakes will be coming soon, probably in June. We have our annual conference, the FTA Summit for people who are in the industry. And then we've got newsletters for both the industry and consumers. And if you're interested in either, you can certainly sign up on our website, familytravel.org. And we have an editorial initiative called FTA Spotlight. This list of 12 different spotlight topics, I won't go through all of them, but you can see here that they cover topics like the changing face of family travel. It's no longer necessarily that a family is a male, a female, and a bunch of kids. It can be a mix of all sorts of different family members who all live together, care for each other, and love each other, of course. There's technology impact on traveling with families, traveling with kids with disabilities, how family travel can change in the future, and how, of course, how travel can change a family itself. And you can find articles on these topics and many more on our website. I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the findings from our study with NYU. The first bullet point, you'll see that 93% of the respondents are either very likely or likely to travel with their children in the next 2 years. And that really shows, that kind of strong response to the survey shows a bit of the interest in family travel and just how strong the industry is. It's really a pretty huge part of travel as a whole, as the industry as a whole. And we're just seeing anecdotally more and more growth across the board with family travel. Respondents took an average of 3.5 domestic trips and 1.25 international trips with their children in the past year. And families most prefer to travel with children when the children are between the ages of 6 and 12. And this may not surprise anyone, particularly parents. But kidding aside, anytime you get a kid out into a new experience, a new adventure, be they 4 or 17 or some other time, it's, of course, a positive thing. But we've just found that most parents naturally gravitate to this particular age range, the so-called sweet spot, to be able to have the most engagement from an interaction with their child. Sadly, of respondents who had paid vacation days, and so mind you, this is a U.S. study, and this is a problem that's kind of endemic in the U.S., but of respondents who had paid vacation days, over 50% did not use them all last year. And this is a trend that we've seen in the United States for some time, where people aren't using all their vacation days. And there are various promotional programs and things out there to try and help these afflicted individuals to actually get out there and vacation more and travel more. And then the study respondents also, of course, as you might assume, highly value the educational and emotional benefits of travel. And last year's study with NYU really focused on parents particularly, but our next study is also going to have a section on multi-generational families as well, or multi-generational travel. So whereas we really focused just on parents before, future studies are going to focus on both parents and grandparents and how they travel with their kids and grandkids. So that's it for me, and just a nice quick overview to Family Travel Association for now at least. I'll be back a little bit later, but I'm happy to send you over to Robin so that she can tell you more of Journey's great adventure travel options for families like yours.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Ches. And thank you, Sally, for the introduction. And thank you so much to all of you for joining us for this call tonight. It's great to know that we have an audience out there who's interested in learning more about family adventure travel, and I hope figuring out how you can make your family adventures even better. I'm going to give you a quick overview of Journeys before we dive into the essence of the talk tonight, which is family travel. Journeys has been doing what we do for a long time. My parents started the company in 1978, and they just took a couple of their friends on a trip to Nepal. They had been in the Peace Corps and lived in Kathmandu, and they told their friends about the experiences they'd had, and their friends could only find these expedition-style treks that packed in every comfort of home to insulate travelers from the realities of the places they were visiting. So my parents gathered this group and they said, you know, let's try to do this a different way. Let's try to plan a trip that will let travelers interact and connect with the places that they are traveling to and the people that they're meeting along the way. When that trip was such a success, they said, well, let's try it again. And slowly, they added trips one by one, destinations one by one, until they reached the 60+ destinations that Journeys goes to today. I grew up alongside Journeys. So I grew up with this mindset of global connection, with the idea that people around the world have a lot in common with us and a lot different from us, and learn what that is unless we meet them, unless we embrace them as friends, and unless we ask the questions that we have about the ways in which we're the same and different. We've been doing family trips at Journeys International since I was 4 years old in 1986, when we did a family trek to Kathmandu. Since then, the Journeys for Families program has been growing and growing, and we offer lots of custom and private trips all over the world. As Sally mentioned, in 1998, my family did 7 months of travel all over Asia and the Pacific for the 20th anniversary of Journeys. We had adventures in 12 destinations, and I learned a lot on that trip about what I think is important about travel and how travel can break down our personal boundaries and walls to help us not only learn about ourselves, learn about the world, but also connect with our family members in a powerful way. Now we're adding a 3rd generation of travelers to our family. And I'm excited to take my son on adventures all around the world as he gets older and older. I'll talk in a little while about all of the things that you can do with kids at different ages, including kids as young as my son, whose picture I'm trying to get on the screen right now and I'm having trouble advancing it. There we go. So he's just starting to explore, but we'll do a lot more of that as he gets older. So what is the model of Journeys International? We offer private and small group treks and trips of a week or more, and we also offer customized trips. We work with locally operated ground partners in every destination, and we have long-standing relationships everywhere we work that we can rely on to support our expertise. We show you cities, of course. We show you all of the attractions in the major capitals of the world, but most of our trips quickly get out to the areas that we think are a lot more interesting, where you can really immerse yourself in culture, wildlife, landscape, and physical activity. We have two main models of trips, as I've mentioned a little bit. We offer small group trips, and people tend to think that this is the essence of what we do. They tend to think that, well, if I join a tour with a company, I can go with people I don't know on a guided trip and experience the sights of the world. But if I want to go by myself, I'll have to do it on my own. I'll have to figure out where to go by myself. You can, of course, join a group like this, where you have a peer for everybody in your family, where there are multiple generations coming together and lots of kids for other kids to play with. We also at Journeys do custom and private travel. About half of our business is custom and private travel, where you can customize your trip to exactly the specifications you want, on the dates that you want, and if your family is traveling, if you're traveling with your extended family, you can make pretty much a whole small group all on your own, but do it exactly the way you wish. So we do view ourselves as adventure travel. It used to be that the term for companies like us was ecotourism. Just seems that more and more now the words adventure travel are more popular among travelers and in the travel industry. And when people think of that, they tend to think of pictures like this. They tend to think of adrenaline and speed and heights and rush. And of course, all of these things are possible. All of the pictures you see are from our trips. But we think that adventure is not just about extreme sports or camping in caves with torches, unless you want it to be. We think that the challenge of adventure comes from newness, and it can happen at any level of exertion. Adventure happens when a traveler steps outside of her own bubble to just ask questions and explore the things that make her curious, to pursue connection. Adventure happens when you go where a big bus can't take you, where you interact with local people, you experience the wild world. The best adventures break down boundaries. They result in exhilaration and sheer delight. Adventure is about choosing to step outside your comfort zone and embracing what the trip throws your way. So that's what we do in general. We do that for people of all ages. We do that for groups with no kids at all. But family travel is something we're really passionate about at Journeys. And we have a division that we call Journeys for Families. Just skipped ahead there on you. So family travel is, as Chaz mentioned, traveling with more than one generation of people who are related either by choice or by blood. So if you travel with members of your family, we think that it means you get huge benefits, whether you have kids in the group or not. It's easier to connect with your family members without the distractions of daily life. You get a shared experience that becomes a family touchstone for years to come. You have deeper bonding as you process these new experiences together and hear each other's reflections. And you have a ready-made group. These slides keep jumping, sorry about that. Families with kids, though, have a couple of particular needs. Families with kids are looking to make sure that the experience is enjoyable for people of all ages. And sometimes with kids, that means you want to change hotels less often. You don't want to try to see everything and learn everything. You want to take in a manageable amount so that it stays fun. You want more downtime. And on our family trips, we try to see things from a kid's angle. We try to choose guides who get it, how kids' sense of humor works, what kids are interested in. And we try to shape a mindset, not just see a place. So this specialty groups slide I keep accidentally to, we're ready for it now. I just want to mention that a group that's all kids is a little bit different from a group that is parents and kids, maybe grandparents. We do specialty groups, trips for school groups or scouting groups. They're a little bit different. I just want to mention that we can serve this group, but we think of a whole different set of considerations when we plan those trips. We're really focused on the needs of the particular group that we are planning a trip for. So when it comes to families, people who are traveling with their relatives, and particularly with kids, you might be wondering, and you might have signed on tonight to ask, how do I plan a family adventure? What should I be doing about? What should I be thinking about if I want to plan a trip for my family? Just having a technical difficulty with the slides here. Hopefully it'll advance for me. So first of all, I want to mention timing. I want to mention that it's a good idea to think about your trip 8 to 12 months in advance if you have that flexibility. It's going to give you the most options. It's going to let you get the accommodations that you want for your trip. I also think there are benefits for having that lead time to look forward to the trip, to learn about the places that you're going, to talk together. And studies show that there's as much enjoyment in getting ready for a trip and anticipating it as there is in actually going. I think it's important when you're planning a family trip to ask for input from your family members, but to do it in context. It can become an overwhelming, almost impossible task if you say, okay, we all want to go on an adventure. Who wants to do what? And then everybody has different ideas. Somebody wants to go on a cruise, somebody wants to go on a trek, and it's hard to organize everything. But if you can present a couple of choices and then ask all family members for their preferences, you can make sure that everybody feels like it's their trip and that they're getting the experience that they invested in from the outset. It's also a good idea to have a point person for planning. Of course, in many families, there's somebody who naturally falls into the organizer role. But if you end up working with a company like ours, it can be helpful to make sure one person is streamlining all of the communication so that the company gets a clear view and gets the impression that you're trying to communicate of what exactly you're looking for in your trip. So when you start this planning, when you get your family together, one thing that I think is critical is to know your needs. To think about this, whether you're the one-point person or to talk about it as a group. Who's coming on the trip? What are the ages of the people who are coming on the trip? Gather collective information about all of these points. And in particular, if you're planning a multi-generation trip, the needs of your group are going to be a little bit more complicated. It'll be even more helpful to get everybody together so that everybody can hear from each other what they think the trip will be all about. That can help all family members feel more open to the parts of the trip that might not fit their own particular vision because they understand what people with different needs or different views need from a trip. It's also especially helpful on a multi-generation trip to plan everything in advance because the bigger your group, the harder it is to make a decision on the fly about what activities should look like. It's also important to have choices of activities because you might find, even unexpectedly, that people of different ages or just people of different interests really don't all want to do the same activities and don't have the energy for the same activities. It's good to choose accommodations that have comfortable rooms, but also have comfortable common areas. Because when your family members are split up among different hotel rooms, it's nice to feel like you're comfortable hanging out in the central portion of your lodge or other accommodation. For multi-generational families, some suggestions I have are Costa Rica, Panama, Tanzania, Galapagos. We really can plan multi-generational trips to tons of destinations, but those are a few where there are such a variety of activities and the right types of accommodations to make a multi-generational trip a great success. So what are some of the other questions you should ask about your own group? What do you need to know about yourselves as you plan a trip? Well, you should ask, what are our interests? Take stock of the different types of hobbies that you might want to touch base with during the trip. Ask yourselves, what are our physical abilities and what is the range of physical ability? Do we have any particular unique limitations as a group? Do we have children with disabilities? Do we have adults with health issues? What are the things that we should make sure to communicate with anybody who's helping us plan our trip to ensure that the trip will be a success? Also, do you have any quirky deal breakers? Do you have somebody who refuses to sleep on the ground, even if it's a very comfortable mattress? Do you have group members who absolutely cannot stay up later than 9 p.m. Make sure you identify these things so that you don't accidentally stumble upon these deal breakers once it becomes too late to change the plans easily. Lastly, I want to mention family politics because this is something that you might not want to bring up, that you might not want to talk about out loud, but in some families you know that if you leave anything undecided, it will become a major battle once the trip has begun. And if you're a family like this, it's good to recognize that in yourselves so that you know you shouldn't plan for a bunch of meals on your own, or if so, you shouldn't expect that everybody will eat those meals all together. Otherwise, it might be a recipe for disaster. Then, once you know what you are looking for, I say it's time to choose your own adventure. I put it in these words because I don't think that every part of a trip has to be an adventure. It's okay for some of the elements of the trip to fall within your comfort zone. So consider all of these different elements of a trip. And all of these bullet points are going to impact your choice of destination, but I want to start by talking about destination and talking about what destinations are right for kids of different ages. So infants. One of our travelers who is on the webinar tonight said, "International travel with babies and toddlers seems very overwhelming to me. Is this just a mental block I should get past with the right information? Or is it really best to wait a few years before having international adventures?" I love this question because I think it's so easy as a parent of a little one, and I do this myself, to think, oh, with all of the stuff we'd have to take with us, or with the difficult schedules of a kid, oh, I'm just going to wait until my kid is older. But if it's important to you to have adventure in your own life, the year with an infant before your kid is walking is a great time to hit the road because your kid is portable. You can strap them on in a baby carrier or stick them in a stroller and make your way around any city. You probably won't be able to convince your kids to go to art museums with you again until they're in their teens. Infants will sleep on the go. They'll nap against your chest or in the stroller, and you have a lot of flexibility. You just want to take into account the weak immune systems of infants and pick places that are fairly well developed. Some places I like for families with infants are Japan, Israel, and Italy. These are all places where you can settle into one lodge or maybe move between two hotels, and without having to schlep the whole family all over the place, you can still take in a huge amount of culture in a place that will have the conveniences, comforts, and the safety that will make you comfortable with your small infant. So what about once your kid starts toddling? I think with toddlers, they're more attuned to the world. Their nap schedules are a little bit more fragile. Their schedules need to be more adaptable because you might have certain plans laid, and then your kid decides that, well, actually this meal is going to take 2 hours and not 30 minutes. And you don't want to have a battle with your kid all along the way on your trip. I think toddlers is a particularly tricky age to travel, but there are places that you can go. I think there are certain cities in the world, and one is Amsterdam, where there are tons of museums and parks where you can have unstructured time but take in a new place and a new culture. Another great place is Belize. Belize is a destination where it's easy to stay in a lodge that's near the sites and attractions that you want to see, so that one parent could stay at the lodge during nap time if a kid is napping off schedule or just takes a long afternoon nap, and the other could go out and do an activity during that period, so everybody doesn't have to be chained to the hotel room during nap time. Lastly, I'll mention cruises. We don't offer any cruises that are appropriate for kids of this age, but if your family is interested in that kind of experience, or also an all-inclusive resort, it's another great place to just have an easy trip with little kids where there's plenty of food that kids will eat. So I like to mention those things. So then your kids will get a little older and hit the sweet spot that Ches was talking about. This is a great age to travel with kids, and it's usually when people start taking trips that are sort of the classic Journeys International adventures, because kids are ready to soak everything up. They've been figuring out their own world for the past 6 or 8 years, and now they have the skills that they need to ask all of the questions in an international place about how things work and why people do the things they do. This is the age when kids will show you a whole new perspective on the places that you're traveling. It's important with elementary schoolers, of course, to be aware that when they're so easily stimulated, they're going to get really bored with long car rides or with packing up every 2 nights to switch hotels. So at this age, it's also good to think about destinations where you can minimize the amount of transit and pack the itinerary with activities, and then leave the nights early for lots of sleep so that they're well rested the next day. 3 places I suggest for this age group are Costa Rica, tons to do, tons of hands-on wild activities. Panama, which has a huge variety, and I think is becoming a more popular family destination for those that have already been to Costa Rica, or who want a little bit more culture in addition to the wildlife that Costa Rica offers. And then I would suggest Thailand. There are so many interesting activities that you can do, crafts and animal encounters in northern Thailand, and families with elementary schoolers, especially older elementary schoolers, love Thailand. All right, so now we get to the middle school years. What do you do with your preteens? Well, I think this age group really gets a bad rap when you talk to teachers. But when you get your kid on their own, away from the social pressures that they face in their hometown, I think it's an especially delightful age for travel. Some kids might be sullen, but when you engage them, oh, this is such a great age for kids who are developing more patience. They can be engaged in the trip planning in a new way. You can help them feel like they're growing up by inviting them to share their thoughts to shape a part of the trip. They're really receptive to new ideas about how they fit into the world. So 10 to 13-year-olds are great candidates for trips to Australia, where you can ask, what's the same and what's different? How do we function in a place that seems very similar to the US but has a lot of differences? The Galapagos, where you can learn all about evolution and see great wildlife, plus swim with sea lions at least once a day. What preteen would say no to that? And Tanzania is a great trip for this age. I think earlier than at least about 8, if not 10, the long drives on safari can be a little bit tough, but when you get preteens on safari, they are so thrilled. And then teens. I think sometimes teens fall off the radar screen either because they don't want to be on family trips with little kids, or because they're so busy with their extracurriculars that it's hard to draw them away from everything they're engaged in at home. But once you get through the challenge of getting a teen on a trip, you can choose a destination that you couldn't do with a younger kid. It's tons of fun to connect a trip to the intellectual interests of your developing teen. You can create space on certain trips for independence, where teens can explore a little bit on their own. And it's a great time to look at our Journeys for Families Adventures for Teens to see what we've identified as activities that are especially appealing for families that have kids in this age group. I suggest Greece because it connects to what people are doing, to what teens are doing at school. Suggest Nepal. You can do a lot of amazing trekking and hiking, and Kathmandu has this sort of romantic appeal to teenagers. New Zealand is a destination I would save until your kids are teens, because there are a lot of activities there that kids will love, but that have lower boundaries on the age limit. So the minimum age is 14 for some things in New Zealand. I also suggest South Korea. There's so many Korean influences in pop culture, and it's really fun for kids to go and explore the home of some of the things that they encounter all the time. I also suggest Indonesia because there's so much variety, so many animals to interact with, so much rich culture, and a lot of time on the water. It's a long trip to do with kids of younger ages. It's a sophisticated culture to understand, but it's phenomenally fun if you have teenagers on that trip. And then, of course, family travel doesn't have to stop. So as you think about where you want to go with kids, with your kids at every age, you might even want to plan out your course of travel, including the places you want to go when your kids are in college or in their 20s, thinking about saving places like Argentina with the great wine, or South Africa with the really complicated questions of culture, or Southeast Asia with kind of a troubling recent history. These are incredible places to process as a family as your kids get even a little bit older. And since you can't cram in every worthwhile destination before your kids turn 18, you might as well think about where you'll all go once they're 18 or older. Okay, so those are some factors that are age-related in considering your destination and choosing your adventure. But what are the other things you need to think about? Well, duration. If you want to go away for longer or for shorter, that might place limitations or point you in one way or another for where would be a great destination to pick. Also, your dates. You want to think about seasonality, and if you want a group trip, you want to compare your availability to the offerings of the companies that you're looking at. Think about distance. How far away from home are you willing to go? And this is especially a factor if you have kids that are antsy, you don't want to take your toddlers on really long flights. Just consider how far you think is a reasonable distance for your trip. Consider the activities that you want to do. Now, we got a question in advance of the webinar about what kinds of activities are best included in a family itinerary. And oh my gosh, there are so many. I think anything hands-on is a fantastic activity with kids. Anything where you're doing and not just hearing or talking is perfect for kids. And the other thing I love to mention is that there are so many things that you can turn into an activity that you wouldn't necessarily have thought were an activity. So you can learn about traditional crafts, traditional sports. You can take bike rides as a family. You can play sports with local kids. You can also not just look at an animal, but have a great guide who will let you interact with the animals. You can do snorkeling, you can taste new foods, and really go on a mission to find new foods and keep score who's tasted the most new things. And just going to click through a couple other pictures here of things that you can do with kids. But we get kids engaged in cooking classes, which I think some people don't expect. They think kids are going to be too young, but this is a great multi-generation activity to include on a family trip. And I like to just point out that there are things that might seem obvious to you that aren't obvious at all to a kid. And so finding the hidden secrets and surprises of a place, like picking this rubber off a rubber tree, finding something that looked like dirt and is actually incredible, will keep a kid riveted. And you need a guide who can help you tune into these things about a place. You'll find it fascinating too, and you might not have figured those things out if you didn't have a kid along. Other things to think about: physical difficulty. How hard a trip are you aiming to take on? And what are the physical abilities of everybody in the group so that you can hone in on the right level to satisfy everyone? Also, accommodations. And this kind of goes along with level of service, level of comfort. Are you up for the campsite with a toilet tent? Do you want a private boutique lodge with a plunge pool at every room? Are you willing to go offshore in a boat to get someplace you couldn't go by road? Think about kind of where your threshold is, both what you're willing to pay for and also kind of how far you're willing to push your comfort zone. Think about your companions. This is another key question to ask yourself. When we think about whether you want a group with other kids for your kids to engage with. They can hang out together, the guide can keep them company, and they might not need as much from you. At the same time, if you choose a custom private trip, you have a ton more flexibility. It's just you and your kids, and you can go on your dates, you can go to the places that you want, you can ask your guide to change activities on the fly, hopefully not too often, but they're thrilled to make it the trip that you want. So you want to ask yourself that question of who your companions should be. Think about whether your kids are learning a language that you want them to try to use on a family trip. And lastly, I encourage you to think about the level of service you're seeking. Do you want everybody to stay out of your way and to run your trip yourself? Do you want somebody turning down your bed at night? Do you want one guide for every 2 people to make it that personalized? Think about kind of what your standards are for the service that you expect. All of these things will help you craft a trip that meets the expectations that you have and hopefully fulfill your dreams. But of course, there's always money. A lot of people submitted questions in advance about how to make the budget work. One person said, how can families maximize adventure while staying within a workable budget, especially for bucket list destinations? Great question. And I love that this attendee said, especially for bucket list destinations, because I'm going to mention a couple of things that I think relate to maximizing your budget that are relevant for those trips that you look forward to forever. So first of all, I want to say, make sure you know what your budget is. You don't want to get 2/3 of the way through the trip and all of a sudden start stressing out because you feel like, oh, this trip is twice as much as I thought it was going to be. Second, remember to think per person about costs. Most of the things that you buy or register for a trip are going to be priced per person, and you want to think about your budget in those terms and multiply the per person prices times the number of people to make sure you're fully aware of what you're getting into. So the next thing I want to encourage you to do is make a list of all of the things you need to think about in considering the cost of a trip. Remember, there's the tour price, but there's also your transportation. Often our trips, don't have international airfare included. Or if you're driving, you have to think about the gas costs. So think about any permits that might be involved. If you're going to parks or nature reserves, a lot of destinations that have wildlife as the major attraction will charge you possibly several $100s for access to that wildlife, and you don't want to forget about that in your budget. Remember to take into account any meals that aren't included in the tours that you're doing, and consider what your plans are for those. Remember, tipping And that's, again, a per person expectation of most guides. And think about how much shopping do you want to do on your trip? What kinds of souvenirs or art are you planning on bringing back? And finally, the gear that is required for the activities that you plan on doing on your trip. So as you think of all of these things, you might start to think, wow, travel is expensive. It's important to me. I really want to do it, but I want to get that bang for my buck. So here are some places I've identified that you can think about cutting costs without really interfering with your experience. First of all, think about the level of accommodation. It might feel like a great treat to stay in a luxury hotel, but you might have even a better experience in a family-owned lodge where your kids can interact with the kids of the owner. Think about having some casual meals. Think about having some picnics. Think about some places where you just go to a grocery store, explore the local products, and then eat in your room. Another thing I want to mention that is often unconsidered by travelers is the number of guides that might be with you on a day of a trip. So usually you'll have one main guide if you're going on a guided tour. And there might be a day when you're going on a rafting trip and your main guide is still sort of on retainer, on location with you, because their services will be needed for part of that day or the next day. And yet you have the rafting guides from the rafting company who are also being paid to serve you on that day. So if you're worried about costs, this is another thing to ask about or to think about in coordinating the order of activities in order to make sure that you're paying the right number of guides, whether that's 0, whether that's 3, the right number of guides to be with you on a day and not paying for more than that. Also, think about staying closer to home. I say this especially because flights farther away cost more. Now, I'm going to mention something that might sound counterintuitive, which is to do more on each trip. And I say this because there might be bucket list destinations that you really want to hit as a family. And if you can combine into one trip, you're going to end up only spending the travel and transportation costs once and getting to do a lot more activities all at once. And then you'll have an amazing set of memories to draw on together as a family. I also encourage you to plan way in advance because then you can be on the lookout for deals, but also because planning in advance means that you get the enjoyment of travel during that planning phase without taking as many trips as a family, and you can still really build that value of family and exploration. Next, I want to mention leveraging exchange rates. If you can plan your trips in the places where the dollar will go farther, you can really find some benefit for your pocketbook in the deals that you'll get that way. My family happened to be in Asia in 1998 when there was a huge economic crisis, and it's very sad to be in a place that's struggling. But you're also fortunate to have lots of experiences and to be able to share the dollar and to share the value of your spending in a place where it's really needed. Lastly, it's fun to get new stuff for a trip. I love it, but you really will save money if you use the gear that you already own and try your best to use the clothes that are already in your closet. I also want to mention a couple of ways I don't suggest trying to save. One is to wait to book your activities until you arrive. Some people think, oh, well, if I don't reserve that until I arrive, I'll find some deal on the ground if I don't book my rafting trip or if I don't find a guide for the city tour. This might be true, but you will almost definitely compromise the quality of your experience by doing that. You may not find availability, and you might be stuck spending money for accommodations when you can't do the activities that you intended. And you'll add to the stress level of your trip incredibly. Something else I want to mention is, just jumped a slide there on its own. Something else I want to mention is taking a short trip may be less expensive, but the proportion of your trip that you're committing, the proportion of your budget that you're committing to the travel expense becomes much higher the shorter the trip is. So I think taking wonderful, amazing, mind trips every couple of years may be better than a long weekend every year or even twice a year. I want to caution you against finding deep discounts as a way to save, like Groupon type deals, because often you won't realize what you're sacrificing by getting a trip booked that way, and you won't have any flexibility. You'll have very little recourse for quality when you book activities in that way. And lastly, I want to caution you against thinking that a group trip is a way to save money. Now, it may be that the price of a group trip is lower than the price of a custom trip, and I encourage you to think about group travel. Group trips are not a bad idea by any stretch. What we find is that people will think, oh, a custom trip is totally out of my reach. I could never take a private trip with my family. It would be too expensive. In reality, the costs are not necessarily far out of line. There are some private trips that would be less expensive than some group trips. And it's worth asking your trip organizer, or asking your travel consultant what they can do for you for a custom trip, because that might be the way to get exactly the trip of your dreams. So hopefully these tips can help you at least a little bit in feeling like you can get good value in the travel that you're planning for your family. So as you're considering travel providers, and particularly now I'm talking about companies like Journeys International and Journeys for Families, companies that are planning a comprehensive experience for your family. What should you be looking for? So first of all, you want to make sure you're going with a company that has experience with kids and what they need. You also want them to be interested in your kids, and particularly ask you questions about what your kids are into so that they can match you with the right experience for your family. You want to look for a company that offers specific activity descriptions so that you're sure you know what you're getting into, and also to make sure that there are indeed activities included in the trip, that it's not just kind of the sightseeing, it's the sight doing. You want to look for companies and for itineraries that have options for activities for different ages, that minimize the travel time and maximize the activity time, that include downtime that kids really need to take breaks, to breathe, to process in between all of these stimulating and overwhelming activities on a family trip. Always make sure that you're staying at hotels with pools. If your kids don't like to swim, I guess you'll know that, but I have rarely encountered a family where a pool was not the perfect relief after a long, exhausting day, and where the kids didn't love diving into a pool. And lastly, look for a flexible company, because companies with rigid policies will be very hard to work with if you end up having the kinds of surprises come up that often do with families. At Journeys International, we are structured into a team with adventure specialists. This is like a team of moms, really, that has experience planning trips all around the world. And when you come to Journeys, you'll be paired with a particular adventure specialist who will get to know your family over time to make better and better recommendations. We can draw on our long expertise of anywhere between 5 and 30 years on this team in helping you shape the right trip for you. Journeys is different because we focus on human connection and individual experience, because we have a track record of 35 years with personalization and customization of trips. And because you'll develop this personal relationship with us, with a staff that is really loyal and long-term and will be around to serve you for a long time. So thanks for listening, and I'm going to turn it back over to Sally, who can moderate the Q&A, and you can give us what you've got.
All right, great. Thanks, Robin. Let me get our webcams back up here. See me. Get Ches back up here. There he is. All right, so here is everybody. I'm going to go to the next screen here, the next slide. All right, thanks so much, Robin and Ches. This is such great information. Robin, you said something that I wanted to jump in and agree with wholeheartedly about what you learn on these trips traveling with your kids. I know I've learned so much from my kids just watching what they pick up that I never would have noticed along the way, and that's one of my favorite parts about it, is having those fresh eyes to be able to look through. So I completely agree with that point that you made. I'm going to keep this screen up for a few minutes so you can write down whatever contact information you want for Robin and for Ches, and we will jump into the questions here. Let's see. Did I lose my screen there? I think I did. Sorry about that.
While you're getting that back up, I'm just going to mention that the Journeys International blog actually has a lot more resources that might be interesting to those of you who are on the line. So you can check out blog.journeysinternational.com, and in particular, you might want to check out the article about where to travel with your kids at any age.
All right. Thanks for that, Robin. So, Robin, you did touch on some of the questions that have come in, but I want to see if you can dig a little bit deeper on some of these. You talked a lot about the budget side of things and how to keep your trips within budget, but can you talk a little bit more about specific destinations that might be less expensive than others and might be good places to go without breaking the bank?
Sure, definitely. My expertise is, of course, international, and among international destinations, I think there are countries in Central America that are a really good deal. Costa Rica tends to be fairly inexpensive, and Belize and Panama are a little bit more than Costa Rica, so that's surprising to some people, but good to be aware of. Another country that can be a fantastic deal is Indonesia. Now, the airfare can be a little bit more expensive, but if you can get a deal on the airfare, the trip itself will be surprisingly inexpensive. And I love suggesting that to people who think, oh, I could never go away to a Pacific island, when in fact it's really an accessible destination compared to many other tropical paradises.
All right, that's great. Thank you. Ches, you touched on this during your part of the presentation, but a question came in about different types of adventure, and you had mentioned hard adventure versus soft adventure, and the specific question is, let me make sure I get it right here. I'm intimidated by the concept of hard adventure, and I've always been intimidated by the concept of adventure travel. Can you talk a little bit more about the difference between the hard and the soft, and then do most travel companies know the difference? So if you say to them you want more of the soft adventure travel, will they know what you're talking about?
Great question. The first thing to realize is that, of course, the idea of adventure is totally subjective. What might be adventurous to you might be totally mundane to me, or vice versa. I mean, I personally know from my years in the outdoor industry, I know people who would consider a climb on Denali pretty mundane and not that adventurous. But I certainly know, and there's probably a lot of people that our listeners might know, who to go to the next state might be a big adventure. So adventure is totally subjective. The vast majority of tour operators, though, are really specializing in soft adventure. Like I mentioned earlier, literally 98% of the industry focuses on soft adventure because that's what most consumers can access. That's what they want. Those are those hiking tours. Those are the biking tours. And generally, when you're going to find a tour operator, they're generally going to be looking to provide those soft adventures. The ones who focus on hardcore adventures are really specialists. If you're looking to climb a mountain, then you would find an alpine tour operator. If you're a hardcore road cyclist, you want to crank out 100-mile days, they're an operator for you. But the vast majority of operators are really focused on the soft adventures. And if you mention soft adventure, they'll certainly have a concept, at least, of what you're talking about when you talk to them on the phone.
Great, thank you.
I'll also chime in there to say many tour companies rate their trips on the physical difficulty of the experience. And that's a great data point to look at when you're trying to decide if a trip is accessible to you. If a trip is rated a level 2 on a scale of 1 to 4, that means you'll get some good activity, but you won't be breaking your back. If it's rated a 4, you want to ask a lot more questions about what the individual activities are that are involved in the itinerary.
Good point, yeah.
All right, we have another question. We actually got a couple of questions about this on the registration form, and then we have another one here about traveling with kids with special needs. And one specific question has to do with traveling with children who are on the autism spectrum, and then also kids with physical disabilities. And this is probably a question for both of you. Robin, if you can talk to how a company like Journeys or any travel company could or should plan accordingly or help you plan a trip accordingly. And then Chris, Ches, I know you have some resources on your website specific to this topic as well. So Robin, do you want to go first on this one?
Sure, I'd love to chime in. So first of all, I think you want to go on a trip like this with a company that responds with questions if you mention that your child has special needs. If a company thinks, oh yeah, we can do that, and then doesn't ask any more, you're probably not going to get what you need for your kid that has particular requirements for a trip. You also want to go with a company that is sensitive in embracing the idea of travelers that come with different perspectives, different abilities, different abilities to embrace what happens on the trip. I think a company like Journeys, we would talk with you in depth, and we would help you evaluate whether your family is a good candidate for a group trip or whether you should be looking at custom travel. But once you say that you want a custom trip, we're ready to really shape an experience that's appropriate for your family and to select a guide who we think will be able to to welcome your family with sensitivity and with the skill set needed to help every member of your family have a great time. So custom trips are a fantastic experience to consider when you have particular aspects of an experience that are going to be critical for success. There are companies that focus on creating experiences for families with special needs, but I like to tell families they don't need to look exclusively to those companies, because there are a breadth and wealth of experiences out there in the world when you work with companies that really focus on customization and are willing to work with whatever needs you throw their way.
Great, thank you. Ches, do you want to talk about some of the family travel resources and work that you've been doing on this topic?
Sure. Traveling with kids with special needs is actually one of the core topics for our Spotlight series, so anyone can go to our website, familytravel.org, go to the Spotlight series. There's a box on the right-hand side. Click on that, and that'll lead you right to that section, and there's a wealth of information there. We have worked in the past with different companies that do specialize in working with kids with special needs. I think we've got some resources there specifically for kids that are on the autism spectrum through some of the articles and things that are posted there. And it's actually this month's highlight. So when you go to our website, one of the first shots you'll see on the rotator on the website itself is a family traveling with a daughter with special needs. So you can just click right on that, and that'll kind of open the door to that gateway to that additional information. And of course, you can always email me directly too with the information that Sally's got on the slide below.
Great, thank you. We have another question here about traveling with group as a group departure, so joining a group instead of a custom trip. If you have an only child and you intentionally want to join a group so that your child has other children to play with, how can you work with a tour operator like Journeys or similar tour operator to make sure that the other kids on that trip are going to be of similar age, so that you don't end up with, the question is, with my only child who's 8 traveling with a kid who's maybe 14?
Great question. So at Journeys, we're really tuned into this. And as soon as we know that we have a family with particular ages on a group departure, we start targeting our outreach at other families with kids who are those same ages. I also find that it ends up being pretty self-selecting. Once a family signs up that has kids who are 6, 9, and 10, a family that has kids who are 14 and 17 is likely not going to choose that trip. Of course, you can't always count on that. But if it's a concern to you, you can mention it to a company like us, and we can even help create different departures for groups of families with different ages. At the same time, we don't like to limit it too much, because there are families whose kids are very far apart in age, and they want to find a group that has peers for both of their kids. But communication is the key to solving that challenge, because often a company is more hands-on than you can tell on the surface in shaping the composition of a group.
Yeah, if I could chime in, Robin's exactly right. There might be an operator out there that you might talk to who just says, just wants to maybe make a sale. The ones that are truly focused on family adventure travel, they're aware of that. They know they've maybe already got that 6-year-old on the trip, and they want to get other families with 6-year-olds on that trip. They don't want to have that kind of disjointed level of teens with younger kids and things like that. It's all part of the entire experience, and a good, really family-focused operator will really keep an eye out for that. So again, to Robin's point, communication is the key. That's a great question to ask the operator when you're talking to them.
All right. Let's see, we are out of time. I had one more question, but I will not be able to ask it. So on that note, it is 9 o'clock. Out of respect for everybody's time, I want to go ahead and wrap up. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us tonight. Before you go, just a reminder that we are recording this webinar, and you'll be getting an email to let you know when it's available online, so you can come back and watch it again or share it with other people who you think might be interested in it. So look for that email, and feel free to email any of us with your comments, your feedback, or additional questions. You have Robin's information here and Chez's, and they are available at any time for any questions. That is all we have. Thank you so much for attending, and we wish you happy trails.
Hi, guys.
Thanks, everyone.